what I brought with me. This is based on the Botany Bay story. So these are, they're not all up in the wall, there's not enough space here. But there are 124 species that Banks and Shoalhaven took to England on the first trip of Cook. The visitor had at the museum, we talked about this thing, and they said, well, we can scan you for the first time this material. And they have a 3D scanner now, so that you get really high quality scans. This one is a sheet from the first voyage. There is Daniel Shoalhaven and Joseph Banks, and he gave it to Brown to take it with him to recheck something. So Brown took some sheets from Banks back to Australia, then did some more research and brought them back again to England. So all these sheets have a lot of information that I still don't know how to process that within my work. I think it's an amazing story because it's the first transport from Australian plants out of Australia to England. That's the whole family from Banks. I have all the sketches from Parkinson and all the artwork that they did 5 to 10 years later in London. The only things I don't have are the plates and the etchings. Doug Benson at the Botanical Gardens. He did the biggest study on Botany Bay, the most complete one. It's a very good study about what was where and how they collected, where they collected on those 10 days that they were at Botany Bay.
Because everything was new, wasn't it? You didn't have to...
Well, they just could just read them in.
The excitement, of having all this new stuff before them.
They were busy.
And they probably would have realised, well, I got 10 days, so...
Then Banks brought this all back, and then he realised the potential of business, because he was more a businessman than a botanist. And then he said, okay, if we send these plants there, and we let them grow there, and we send these plants there, and we change the whole thing, we can do agriculture away from England, in tropical areas, and we can do big business.
I was looking for... Oh, here we are. There's a very delicate... Ooh!
Okay, yeah.
Look, you've got the flowers as well, and the way it's
so Sydney Parkinson
and look how it twists.
Got this, and he drew it.
Yeah, see, you're in his footsteps. But at how it twists. And the other thing that might interest you is that see how the thing goes up the stem. Right. And in the southern hemisphere they go that way.
And here they go the other way.
There, yes.
So it is true that water...
Don't ask me what happens on the equator. You have a
stay straight.
You have a very mixed up plan.
Obviously, stay straight.
I'm trying to think of it.
So all of these drawings, they become like masters for making something. They're not the final works, not at all. Also, if you enlarge them, you make them a lot bigger, and these pieces become not like big abstract forms that you can have in. You have to explain that they come from plant life. That's my practice here, the sort of thing that I have to do before I can even start thinking about what to make. I'm thinking now about actually, there is a project for tapestries that I have to do for a company that is in Spain and in Belgium.
And that's an interesting one because it has little fruits on it, because it's parasitic. It has to have a sticky fruit so that it sticks onto a branch of a tree and then the roots grow into the thing.
I picked some from this series last time.
Oh, right. And the Aboriginal people call it snot golians.
Snot golians?
Because it's nice and sticky like snot. I weave in some of the baskets that it's just adds a nice lot of texture into it.
And that one was collected by Joseph Banks.
Yes. And you sort of have the start. It must have been flowering.
Yeah.
Just starting to flower. It hasn't developed into the
Which is April. That's when they picked it up.
Yeah. The one that you have up, that native pear one, I've always searched for that because it's such a beautiful furry fruit.
And it's not, you can't find it here?
It's probably more once you get up in the highlands. Was it one that they collected at Botany Bay?
Let's check it.
Because these are...
There it is. So that's it. It's this one.
Oh. I was looking for the pear.
Yeah.
I
think you can't put it on a pear on a barren sheet.
No, but it is.
So
oh yes, that's it, yeah.
So that's what they call it, the banks here.
Mm.
And then here comes and that is, so that must be Solander's writing.
Yeah.
So they uncalled it.
Because that's it, I mean, they were going into bushland there that hadn't been touched, except for Aboriginal people, but no white people or European people had been in there to exploit it. Yeah. It's interesting though, because we're doing some work on the ethnobotany of Bundanon,
right.
How the plants were used by Aboriginal people and the Europeans, and there was sort of a crossover between what the Aborigines used and what the Europeans used. And I think sometimes the Europeans saw the way Aborigines used it, and then there were some cases where the Aborigines didn't use a plant, and cabbage tree palm was one. We still have disputes about this. They used the trunk for building, and they ate the bit out of the top as a cabbage.
And then the Aboriginals used it as well.
And then the Aborigines.
They saw it from the European side.
Yeah, because there is...
but also the Europeans must have not touched a lot of plants that the Aboriginals used in their daily. And the whole thing starts a bit with this collection of all these plants. So these are the species that are, these are the 124, according to Doug Benson and according to the people at the Natural History Museum. These are the ones that I have here. Now, since I've been working here, I have to tell you maybe a little bit more about that practice, because it's the third time I'm here. And the first time it was the shock of, I think it was the sort of the Banks syndrome that got me. The shock of looking at this landscape and seeing how, not just how different it was, but how, I mean, every shape and every form basically is different from any Mexican or European landscape. And the whole botany of that area and the whole botany here. And actually the first walks I had, I got lost because even directions are different, because the shapes of plants are different. That means you get lost if you don't know.
Trees, I mean, they're gum trees, and then you might turn at the banks here and so on. Just it's sort of going through your mind.
The second visit, I felt more familiar, and I think I walked a lot more and I saw a lot more. And the series became interesting because I could pick out very small bits and pieces from the landscape, and with that create a whole series of prints, and later on quite an extensive series of pieces. All this material grew into something interesting for me. This is just a piece of a seed of a cycad. Cut across. So they're all very simple bits and pieces of a fern, eucalyptus leaves. That's also Australia. That's Bundanon. That's Bundanon. That's Bundanon. That's the banyan pine that is in front of the building. And the third one, I'm coming in with, I think, the most concrete of all the projects, which is a story that has to do with Australia, that has to do with Botany Bay, that has to do with Bundanon, probably, if we could figure out if those plants do exist here, or which plants of that list do exist here.
So all the plants that I have on here is Bundanon.
Fantastic.
That's the ones I've found. Because on some of those, because there's lots of weeds and so on, these are the native plants, right? So the ones in that one includes the native plants as well as some of the introduced plants. So what I've got on here is this one here, Bindon's.
So it is
that
native.
looks like it, but where these came from, that list came from?
The Museum of Natural History. I'll tell them that it's not true what they have.
Well, just tell them that we treat that as an introduced plant in Australia.
Well, it has a lot of references here, but it doesn't have what they interchange all these sheets with other herbariums. So this must have come from another place. There's a doubt here. Keep on the doubtful bunch.
There is cobbler's peak. Common name in farmer's friend, pitchfork, sticky beak, native to Europe. While cobbler's peak is not a declared noxious weed, it is considered an environmental weed. So you can have fun with that the next time you're talking to the museum in London.
Oh yeah, I'm having fun already.
Why are you telling them to check their records, eh?
Oh yeah, they're going to go berserk.
It's very important that we do put some more emphasis as well as the cultural side on to the environmental side.
Yeah, and I think it's completely logical.
And the thing about it, of course, because Bundanon being 1,000 hectares, it's important because that's big enough for the survival of endangered plants.
Important one, because I think that explains a lot more about what you can do with a drawing. What you can do with a drawing like that is this. That's how it looks in the daytime. If it wants to show up. And this is how it looks at night.
Night, yes. Oh, that's a beauty, that one.
I want the story to be the story of Banks and Cook and Botany Bay. I want it to be part of the whole work as well. So that's what I'm trying to incorporate. If you do a publication, then you can do it. If you do a show, usually you go through the works. And I think at the end, when everything works, it's going to be almost like a triptych. The 3 visits to Bundanon is going to be turned into one. That could be. That's what I'm a bit after. So making. It feels like the first 2 were like gearing up for the third one.